Module 2. Synergies between international reporting obligations. The Arms Trade Treaty represents a landmark achievement for bringing greater transparency to the international arms trade, and it shares many synergies with existing international reporting obligations to help strengthen this norm. In particular, the ATT is linked to the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms, known simply as the UN Register. Article 13, paragraph 3 of the ATT says that the annual report submitted to the Secretariat may contain the same information submitted by the state party to relevant United Nations frameworks, including the UN Register of Conventional Arms. This module examines the synergies in reporting under the Arms Trade Treaty and the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms. A key objective of the Arms Trade Treaty is to increase transparency in the global arms trade by requiring states to submit annual reports on arms exports and imports, in addition to an initial report on treaty implementation. Definitions. The Arms Trade Treaty does not contain definitions, but the treaty text offers some clues as to what is meant by transfer and what kinds of activities are exceptions to the treaty. In the ATT, transfer is described as the activities of the international trade comprise export, import, transit, transshipment and brokering. The UN Register does not provide a definition for international transfers, but the 1992 report of the UN Panel of Governmental Technical Experts on the UN Register advised that international arms transfers involve, in addition to the physical movement of equipment into or from national territory, the transfer of Title II and control over the equipment. The ATT and the UN Register also provide some guidance about possible exceptions to activities that are considered transfers. The ATT says that this treaty shall not apply to the international movement of conventional arms by or on behalf of a state party for its use, provided that the conventional arms remain under the state party's ownership. The 1992 Panel of Governmental Technical Experts provides more specificity, saying that since the supply of equipment by a state to units of its armed forces stationed abroad does not involve transfer of national title and control, such supply is not considered an international transfer. Equipment of a state can be temporarily stored or prepositioned on the territory of another state with no transfer of title and control of this equipment. This is not considered an international transfer. Types of transfers to report. The Arms Trade Treaty requires states parties to report on authorizations and/or actual exports and imports of conventional arms covered under Article 2, Paragraph 1. Similarly, United Nations Resolution 4636L calls on UN member states to provide annually information on the number of items in 7 categories of conventional arms imported into or exported from their territory in the previous calendar year. The resolution also invites states to provide background information on their military holdings, procurement through national production, and other relevant policies. Since 2004, states have also been invited to provide information on international transfers of small arms and light weapons. Although the ATT regulates imports, exports, transit or transshipment, and brokering of conventional arms, the treaty only requires states parties to submit annual reports on authorizations and/or actual exports and imports of the 8 categories of conventional arms covered by the treaty. The ATT allows states parties to submit to the Secretariat the same information submitted to relevant United Nations frameworks, including the UN Register. Reports are also permitted to exclude commercially sensitive or national security information. Authorization versus actual imports and exports. The ATT requires states parties to report on authorizations and/or actual exports and imports of the 8 categories of conventional arms covered under Article 2, Paragraph 1 of the treaty. This allows states to provide information on 1. Authorized transfers, whether they have been delivered or not, or 2. Those transfers that have been delivered to their final destination. Some states parties have provided information only on authorizations, while others have only reported actual exports and imports. and other state parties have reported on both authorizations and actual exports and imports. States parties are requested in the provisional template to identify if they are reporting on authorizations or actual exports and imports, or both. The UN Register requests that states provide information on actual exports and imports. However, some states have been unable to provide information on actual exports and imports for all conventional arms, in particular for small arms and light weapons transfers, and have therefore provided information on export and import authorizations. Nil reports. In both the Arms Trade Treaty and the UN Register, states have the opportunity to provide a nil report. A nil report refers to a calendar year when a state did not have any exports or imports of the conventional weapons that are included in the scope of the treaty or UN Register. States may complete a nil report for exports and a full report for imports, or vice versa. Conventional arms. The Arms Trade Treaty requires states parties to include their exports and imports of conventional arms in their annual reports. The categories of weapons included in the ATT mirror those categories included in the UN Register. The 7 categories of conventional arms included in both instruments are: 1. Battle tanks, 2. Armoured combat vehicles, 3. Large caliber artillery systems, 4. Combat aircraft, 5. Attack helicopters, 6. Warships, and 7. Missiles and missile launchers. Small arms and light weapons. The ATT requires states to report their imports and exports of small arms and light weapons. The UN Register did not include reporting on small arms and light weapons until 2016, when the group of government experts recommended that states report on SALW transfers alongside the existing 7 categories of conventional weapons covered by the Register. Parts and components. The Arms Trade Treaty requires that states parties maintain national control systems to regulate the export of parts and components, where the export is in a form that provides the capability to assemble the conventional arms covered under Article 2, Paragraph 1 of the Treaty. The ATT does not, however, require states to report on exports or imports of such parts and components. Similarly, the UN Register does not request the submission of recorded information on components of items associated with the 7 categories of conventional weapons covered by the Register. Ammunition. The Arms Trade Treaty requires that states parties maintain national control systems to regulate the export of ammunitions or munitions associated with the conventional arms covered in Article 2, Paragraph 1. But does not require states parties to report on exports or imports of such ammunition or munitions. Similarly, the UN Register does not include ammunition within its scope and does not request that states provide information on imports or exports of ammunition. Reporting deadlines. As part of their Arms Trade Treaty obligations, states parties are required to submit their annual reports on arms exports and imports to the Treaty Secretariat by the 31st of May. UN member states are also requested to submit information to the UN Register annually by the 31st of May. National points of contact. Article 5, Paragraph 6 of the Arms Trade Treaty requires states parties to designate one or more national points of contact to exchange information on matters related to the implementation of the ATT, and to notify the Secretariat of and update the Secretariat on these points of contact. The provisional reporting template for the ATT annual report allows states to provide information on a point or points of contact, including name, organizational affiliation and contact information, such as phone number and email. The standardized reporting form for the UN Register also provides an opportunity to provide information for a national contact point. The point of contact for the ATT may be the same as the national point of contact for the UN Register. Completing the reports. ATT states parties will notice that the ATT Annual Report template includes several columns that are not included in the UN Register reporting template. The ATT Annual Report template includes 2 columns not in the UN Register reporting template for states parties to indicate whether the information being provided relates to authorizations for exports or imports or actual imports and exports. These additional columns are included to reflect the fact that Article 13, Paragraph 3 provides states parties with the option of providing information on either authorizations or actual exports and imports, or to provide information on both. The ATT Annual Report template provides states parties with the option of providing information on either the number of units or the financial value of conventional arms imports and exports, or to provide information on both. The UN Register reporting template requests information only on the number of items imported or exported. States parties also provide the financial value of their arms exports in national reports on arms exports or as part of information exchanges within regional organizations or multilateral export control regimes. The ATT Annual Report template omits the column in the UN Register reporting template for intermediate location, if any. This column is used in the UN Register reporting template for cases where an item is integrated into a system and re-exported. The ATT Annual Report template has shaded columns for remarks to indicate that such information is voluntary. The UN Register reporting template does not contain such shading. The ATT Annual Report template has subheadings for the categories of combat aircraft and attack helicopters, enabling states parties to report separately on imports or exports of manned or unmanned aerial vehicles in these categories. The 2016 group of governmental experts on the UN Register has recommended only the creation of 2 subcategories for combat aircraft and unmanned combat aerial vehicles.